Welcome back to the Gentleman's Gazette and our two-part series on how a suit should fit. In the second part, we discuss secrets to how a suit should fit that are rarely discussed. Now that you know the basics of how a suit should fit, let's look at some advanced things that are usually not talked about. First of all, the back. While most people look at the front, a back can really tell you if a jacket fits perfectly or not. First, in the top of your back, right underneath the collar, you shouldn't have any lines that are horizontal or vertical. Same thing all the way down. The only area where you can have a few wrinkles is around your armpit and underneath the shoulders, simply because you need that for the range of movement. Otherwise, if you see a suit from the back and it's very clean and it hangs very neat and the vents don't gap, I can bet with you that the rest of the suit will fit well, because something like that will never fit like that off the rack. You'll always have to have either some alterations or it's a made-to-measure or a bespoke garment. In this day and age, many men have sloped shoulders, and in my case, my right shoulder is more sloped than the other. So if I take a ready-to-wear garment, I can always see wrinkles directly underneath my armpit, simply because my shoulder hangs lower by about 2 inches or 5 centimeters, and I can also see concentric wrinkles under my right shoulder. That's something I can only fix by either changing the entire jacket, or I can add in a little bit of padding on one side, which then gives you the issue that you may see a little gap on the sleeve. Otherwise, you have to go with a customized pattern that will deviate the flaws of your body and make you look dapper. When you look at the front of the jacket, you ideally want to see an hourglass shape or a V shape on top, and then a skirt that drapes slightly out in the bottom. It's very flattering. In the US, there used to be a sack suit style, but that's not really flattering because it makes you actually look like a potato sack. If you see X wrinkles, that means your jacket is too tight, especially around the buttoning point. If you see vertical wrinkles in the front on your chest, that means it's too big. One thing that's often never talked about is balance. And by that, I mean the length and the proportions of the front and the back when looked at from the side. As I mentioned before, most of the time the back is shorter than the front, and getting it completely level is very hard to achieve, and usually only something you find with bespoke tailors. One thing that has a huge impact on the way your jacket looks are the front quarters and how they're cut. Traditionally, the quarters are much more closed, which in my opinion provides an old man look, versus if you have more open, rounded quarters that are cut up slightly, it provides a certain dynamic. Now, if you open up your quarters too much, you may actually end up seeing the tip of your tie or maybe even your dress shirt from underneath the buttoning point, which is a bad look. So you always have to coordinate the quarters with the rise of your pants. If you have more open quarters, you want higher rise pants. If you have a lower and more close quarters, it doesn't matter. Which brings us to the next point, which is the buttoning point. If your tie pokes out from underneath the buttoning point, the fit is off. In most cases, the buttoning point should be around your natural waist, which is usually the belly button or slightly above. The buttoning point can have a huge impact on how you're perceived visually. Let's say you're a shorter guy. You can slightly elevate that buttoning point because it will give you the appearance of having slightly longer legs. The same is true for my body type. I have a long torso and relatively short legs, so I bring up the buttoning point ever so slightly. That way I look very proportional. I get that 1-to-1 aspect ratio in my length, and I'm just dapper, and people would never assume that I have shorter legs than another man of my height. It works the same the other way around. If you have long legs and a short torso and you want to balance it, you can bring the buttoning point a little lower. Now don't go too extreme, because otherwise you easily look like a guy in the 90s when he had very wide jackets with lots of excess fabric and a very low buttoning point. Also, when your jacket is buttoned, you want to be able to pull it a little bit and have about 2 inches or 5 centimeters of room. Sometimes it can be a little less, but you don't want it to be too tight, otherwise it's uncomfortable, and if it's too wide, you get puddling creases. Note, when you wear a 3-piece suit, you should wear your jacket unbuttoned, versus if you have a 2-piece suit, it should be buttoned. Of course, we could talk about buttoning points, but that's going to be subject of another video, so stay tuned. Now that you know all the important aspects of how a jacket should fit, it's important to keep in mind that a heavier fabric, just like the one I'm wearing here right now, drapes always better than a similar cut or the same cut of a suit in a thinner fabric. It's just the added weight shows wrinkles less and it hides more tailoring flaws or flaws of your body versus a very thin fabric highlights every issue there is in your body and the tailoring. So if you really want to test a tailor and see how good they are, go with a very lightweight thin fabric. As you know, the jacket is only one part of the suit, so let's talk about the trousers or dress pants. They should neither be too tight nor too baggy. They must have the proper inseam length, which means a slight break or no break. And to learn more about that, please check out our in-depth video on pants breaks. Pants must have the right circumference around your waist, bum, thigh, knee, and ankle. You always want clean lines and no wrinkles, although it's very difficult to achieve. Your pleats should never gap, and I believe that a higher rise trouser that sits on the natural waist or slightly below or above is much more flattering and comfortable to wear, especially with a suit. If you're either not in perfect shape or your clothes are not tailored, you probably will need either a belt or suspenders. I think suspenders are better for suits because they're more comfortable unless you mind the weight on your shoulders. Otherwise, they will keep your pants at the same height all day long, versus with a belt, chances are your pants will slide down a little. Now, what does it mean, not too long or just right? And we already created an in-depth guide about how pants should fit, and that applies for all suit pants and dress pants as well. So I urge you to check that out, because otherwise we'd have a 40-minute video here. The outfit I'm wearing today is a three-piece suit tailored of a Harrison's of Edinburgh fabric. It's a fine houndstooth in a dark brown with an off-white. Because this is a more casual suit, I opted for a more casual cut inspired by the 1930 suits from Clark Gable, It Happened One Night. I have 3 patch pockets with nice pleats that open up in the front. It's a single-breasted suit. Lapels are not too wide, not like in the 30s, more contemporary. It is a 3-roll-2 suit, which means you only button the middle button. The waistcoat is single-breasted without a lapel, and I leave the bottom button unbuttoned because that's a tradition, and you can learn more about that in our guide here. The pants have a fishtail back. They're tailored for suspenders specifically, so there are no belt loops. They have inward-facing pleats because I have big thighs, and that gives me extra room. I opted for a light turquoise lining because it adds a dash of color, especially since I wear the jacket unbuttoned with my vest. The pants have nice cuffs, but the real special thing about the suit is the back. It's a so-called action back, which has shooting pleats that makes it very easy for me to move my arms around because it gives me extra room, and it has more decorative elements, and side vents, which is unusual because traditionally they only had no vents. The suit was custom made for me by a tailor according to my pattern specifications, and so it's really the style that I wanted. It has a Milne's buttonhole, which you can see. It has a raised silk thread, and it's a very neat little detail that just shows someone thought about it. I'm pairing it with a plain white fine hand weave dress shirt from Cindy Skalki. It has a very close collar, and as such it's perfect to be worn with a collar pin, which I'm doing here with a gold one from Fort Belvedere. It pairs well with my orange silk knit tie from Fort Belvedere and my gold monkey fist cufflinks, likewise from Fort Belvedere. The ring is citrine and gold, which goes well with the warm tones of my outfit, which are perfect for fall/winter. The socks I'm wearing pick up the brown colors as well as the blue of the wool silk pocket square of Fort Belvedere, and the socks are Fort Belvedere as well. The shoes are chukka-style boots with a leather-soled, Goodyear welted. They're made out of a brown suede that goes well with the ensemble. I like the last about it, which is round but not pointy. At the same time, it's not the usual round you'll encounter. Now that you've seen part 1 and 2 of our series on how a suit should fit, make sure to check out our video on sleeve length, our video on how pants should fit, and the proper pants length, because without them, those 2 would be incomplete. On top of that, if you want to learn more about suits and figure out quality hallmarks, please check out our video on a $100 versus a $1,000 suit and $500 versus $5,000 suits.